furnace in the depths of night. The black tunnel stretched ahead like the throat of some vast and sleeping beast, silent save for the low murmur of water running between the ancient tracks. Every sound carried, the drip of condensation, the grind of metal beneath boot or tread, swallowed by the endless dark and returned as a ghostly echo. Then, from the gloom, light. 3 servo skulls glided silently into view, their lumen eyes flickering as they descended in a slow, deliberate sweep. The glow rippled over the curved walls, revealing glimpses of half-buried relics. Shattered tube trains slumped in their rails, their carriages peeled open like the husks of drowned beasts. Rusted signage clung to the walls in languages long forgotten, and here and there, side passages gaped, black mouths opening into deeper night. The skulls drifted further, their sensor lenses pulsing, painting fragments of the subterranean world in pale light. Twisted rails, corroded gantries, and vast cables coiled like roots. Then, as if summoned by an unheard command, they banked sharply, lumen beams cutting across the walls in a last strobe of light before they vanished back the way they had come, ascending through the murk toward their masters. The dark returned, thicker now and alive with the memory of what the light had shown. Their footsteps echoed like hammer blows against the stone, the sound of ceramite and steel boots mingling with the steady tap of the deacon's staff and the measured stride of the inquisitor behind them. The tunnel widened as they advanced, its arched ceiling vanishing into shadow beyond the reach of their lumens. Osric's voice came low over the vox, distorted slightly by the confined space. "The tunnel opens up ahead," he said, his augmetic eye adjusting its aperture to pierce the dark. The faint hum of his auspex added a mechanical rhythm to the silence. Wulfgar glanced sideways, his Crozius held at ease in one hand, its head glinting faintly in the lumen light. "A junction?" he asked, his tone half statement, half disbelief. "Then this network must be larger than we thought." Behind them, the glow of the servo skulls bobbed like will-o'-the-wisps, their light chasing shadows along the ancient walls. The air grew colder, touched by the scent of metal and stagnant water. Somewhere deeper within, the sound of rushing liquid hinted at vast machinery still pulsing in the dark, a reminder that even here, beneath the earth, the old world had never truly died. It wasn't long before the skulls returned, their lenses flickering. Up ahead lay a junction chamber, vast, circular, and partially flooded. 3 tunnel mouths yawned into shadow, the black water running into them in steady streams. The sound was constant, rhythmic. Along one wall, 3 more tube pods lay rusted beyond recognition, their frames half submerged. A 4th was wedged into a parallel passage that had collapsed around it, its hull groaning under the slow crush of water. Thin jets of seawater hissed through the ruptures, venting mist into the chamber, proof that the tunnels beyond had long since joined the ocean's domain. "This is recent," said Osric, his voice echoing. "Given our depth, if the breach were older, the water would have carved new channels by now." The passage behind filled with light and motion as the Fraterus militia and the Gasthelm spread out, their voices echoing in the stale air. Lumens swept over the walls, casting ghostly beams through broken carriages and half-collapsed archways. The air smelled of oil, rust, and ancient dust, a mausoleum of forgotten industry. One of the Arbites called out, his voice sharp through the static of the vox. "There's another bunker door here." He pulled at the warped frame. The door hung half open, its surface so corroded it seemed to have fused with the wall. Rusticles cascaded down like the roots of some subterranean tree. Wulfgar and Osric moved closer, their armor scraping against the narrow threshold. Inside, the chamber was a ruin. Benches and tables collapsed into heaps of red decay, the ceiling sweating with moisture. "The escape passage," said Osric, pointing his lumen toward a jagged breach at the far wall. The rock beyond had caved in long ago. "Must have gone to the surface," he added. "Not any more," replied the Arbites grimly, tracing the collapsed stone with his gauntlet. They moved back into the wider junction, where the air vibrated faintly with the low hum of unseen machines. Ahead, Godric's voice boomed from deeper in the tunnel, his dreadnought vox throwing echoes down the branching passages. "That tunnel leads to the one our good deacon nearly fell in," he said, his words coming in rolling bursts of vox-distorted bass. He pointed his massive axe toward the flooded lower passage, where crushed trains lay half-submerged, and water jetted from fissures in the walls. "I would not advise going any lower," he rumbled. "If that gives way under pressure, this whole place will flood in moments." He paused, the servos in his sarcophagus whining as he straightened. "Wouldn't bother me, of course," he added, tone dry. "But you'd all be done for." The Vox crackled with static as his helm's optics dimmed slightly, the dreadnought's equivalent of a chuckle. "I suppose I could carry you all back up top for burial," he said, mock cheerful. The militia laughed nervously, the sound small against the immensity of the dark. Wolfgar pointed toward the flooding section. "Can you seal it?" Godric waded forward, the water rising to his mid-chassis, his Vox crackling over the steady hiss. "Auspex shows the break a mile back, the seepage is coming up the line. 5th Company," he barked. The 5th Company gas helm moved, reinforcing the compromised section. They deployed maglock braces and anchor struts while the Mechanicus adepts worked beside them, welding crossbars and spraying foamcrete to plug the leaks. 3 Arbites waded through the cold water, passing riot foam packs and sealing clamps without hesitation. Watching them, Deacon Absalon found himself unexpectedly moved. Perhaps he had misjudged the arbitrators. They were, in their way, faithful servants of the Emperor. Crude and harsh, but devoted nonetheless. Meanwhile, the 2nd Company spread out, bolters raised toward each of the dark mouths. The Frateris militia clustered in the center, muttering half-whispered hymns, their lumen lamps swaying. The air grew heavy, tense and expectant. From beyond the cracked pod came a slow pulse of pressure, a deep, rolling thrum, as though something vast moved beneath the sea. One of the Frateris cried out, clutching his weapon. "We'll drown down here," he shouted, until a priest struck his shoulder with the rod of office. "Faith, lad," the priest hissed. "Faith." Deacon Absalon raised his staff. "Do not fear," he called out, his voice carrying through the chamber. "The Emperor made this path for us. There is purpose in every hardship." The murmurs quieted. For a moment, even the water seemed to still. Katerina Malinovska moved beside him, speaking softly. "I wish I had your faith," she murmured. Absalon smiled faintly, raising a wet hand in benediction. "You are the Emperor's weapon hand. You don't need faith. Duty is your faith. But men like these," he gestured to the shivering militia, "they need reminding." With a creak and a groan, the last of the braces locked into place, echoing through the tunnel like the bones of some ancient beast settling in its grave. Godric watched as the final layer of instacrete was sprayed across the reinforcement struts, the thick gray compound hissing as it bonded to the corroded metal and stone. "That's as good as you can have," the dreadnought rumbled, his Vox crackling with the edge of static. "Until I can get a work crew down here." Steam curled from his exhaust vents as he stepped back, the light from his optics glinting off the damp walls. Around him, the Gastelm and Mechanicus adepts examined the reinforced section, the newly installed braces gleaming faintly under the lumen glow, an island of order in the encroaching ruin. One of the militia whistled under his breath. "Looks solid enough to hold the mountain." Godric's helm tilted slightly toward the man. "Let's hope you're right," he said, with the low rumble that passed for amusement. "I've no wish to be entombed again just yet." Osric clapped a hand on the dreadnought's leg, the gesture half camaraderie, half habit. "If it fails, we'll blame the Mechanicus," he said. "You always do," Godric replied. His heavy footfalls sent ripples across the shallow water as he turned back toward the darkness ahead. "Now let's see what else this tomb wants to show us." As the flood's roar dwindled to a trickle, the chamber settled into uneasy quiet. Only the dripping of water and the shuffle of boots echoed through the dark. Then Absalon lifted his hand again, tilting his head. "Listen," he whispered. A low metallic tone pulsed from far below. Wolfgar walked beside the deacon, his Crozius casting shifting light across the wet metal walls. "Machinery, far off," Wolfgar said, his voice low, the words half statement, half instinct. Godric turned slightly, his heavy frame making the servos in his dreadnought chassis groan. "I've been analyzing the sound," he rumbled, his Vox deep and resonant, vibrating through the stone around them. "It's repetitive, piston-driven pumps, mechanical cycles repeating endlessly. Whatever this place is, it's still alive." The sound was faint but persistent, a slow, rhythmic thudding like the heartbeat of some slumbering god echoing through the deep. Water trickled along the walls, trembling slightly with each pulse from below. "It's what's keeping this place dry," Godric continued. "By rights, we should be crushed under the weight of the sea above. The pressure down here should demand environmental suits capable of withstanding the abyss." He raised one massive power claw, the lenses of his sarcophagus flickering blue as he gestured to the walls. And yet the readings remain near surface level. It stands to reason that active machine spirits are maintaining this structure, perhaps since before the oceans even rose. Wolfgar glanced toward the shadows where condensation rolled down rusted panels and forgotten rails. "But why haven't we detected any of this?" he asked. "The energy required alone must be vast. A network like this should light half the hemisphere." Absalon shook his head, his expression weary. Before he could speak, Osric approached, overhearing. "The Great Forge," he said. "Its vaults and heat exchangers act as a shield. Any auspex or seismic ping would have bounced right off it. We were blind to anything below." As he spoke, his servo skulls darted down each of the 3 tunnels, lumens cutting thin paths through the dark. Inquisitor Malinovska watched in silence as Osric's augmetic eye flared with green readouts, processing the data in real time. After a moment, he spoke, voice calm but analytical. "The right-hand passage is blocked by a cave-in. The other 2 are clear, but they descend at different angles. If I had to guess," he adjusted his focus, "the left tunnel runs beneath the seabed. Roughly 300 leagues offshore, there's an ancient city, long drowned. That's likely where it leads." He turned to the others. "The center tunnel goes toward the foot of Homborg. The mountain extends 3 times deeper than its visible height. 2/3 of it lies beneath the ocean. There was a city there once as well, also long flooded. My guess, this passage was its artery." Malinovska removed her hat, shaking out the damp. "Then there must still be structure below." The techno-archaeologist was crouched by the old rail line, his servitors fanning out and shining cold white lumens across the carved inscriptions on the tunnel entablature. He gave a dry chuckle, the sound echoing oddly off the stone. "The blocked tunnel goes to Tranterham," he called over his shoulder. "The suffix ham means town, city, or dwelling. So you're right, Captain, it once led to a settlement, one of the sunken ones, perhaps." He stood, brushing dust from his red robes, and pointed with a brass stylus toward the other 2 branching tunnels. "That one," he said, indicating the left-hand passage, "is simply marked Ham, perhaps an older name or a warning. The last one," he gestured toward the steep, dark incline descending into shadow, translates roughly as Pylon 1. From near the rear, an Arbeits officer raised his voice. "There's a warm breeze coming up from it." Godric turned his massive dreadnought frame toward the sound, vents hissing softly. "Probably geothermal," he said, his vox making the words sound like thunder in the confined space. Inquisitor Katerina Malinovska stepped forward, her hand on the pommel of her sidearm. "We should split up," she said briskly. "Cover both passages. Learn what we can while we still have power cells and daylight." Deacon Absalon laughed softly, the sound full of good-natured fatalism. "The ancient scriptures do tell that splitting up never ends well," he said, tapping his staff on the stone. "But I'll follow Wulfgar. The Emperor watches the faithful." Cuthhelm gave a curt nod. "Then me as well." "I'll follow the chaplain," Godric rumbled, his optics narrowing with faint amusement. Around them came the murmurs of agreement from the Frateris militia and the Gasthelm alike, none eager to abandon the others in the dark. Osric stepped up beside Katerina, his bionic eye glinting faintly in the torchlight. "I'll go with you," he said with a grin that didn't quite reach his eyes. "It'll be fun." Katerina sighed, shaking her head. "That's exactly what worries me." The group reformed, lumens cutting across the darkness. Together they turned toward the downward passage, the one marked Pylon 1, and advanced into the black, their light swallowed by the tunnel's vast, ancient throat. Katerina fell in beside the chaplain, her boots striking the damp metal flooring in rhythm with his. "Did you just pull rank on me without saying a word?" she asked dryly. Wulfgar gave a quiet nod, the faint light catching the skull motifs on his armor. "I am their scop," he said simply. "And besides, strength in numbers." They walked on in silence for a while. Here the tunnel was drier, the air less heavy with salt and decay. Pale mushrooms clung to the walls and ceiling, their ghostly bioluminescence mingling with the cold lumen beams. The effect gave the corridor the look of a cathedral made from bone and glass, endless and half alive. Behind them, the preacher's voice rose, Deacon Absalon, chanting a slow psalm to the Omnissiah. His words echoed through the tunnel, taken up by the Fraterus militia, their ragged chorus turning the ancient depths into a place of uneasy worship. Ahead, the passage began to level out. Pools of still water gleamed in the light, disturbed only by the occasional drip from above. A dim red glow bled faintly through the blackness ahead. The gast helms spread out instinctively, bolters raised, armor plates whispering against one another. Tunbald moved up beside Wulfgar, his shield half raised, scanning the shadows with the instinct of a veteran. The deacon peered forward, the light of his staff reflecting in the rippling pools. "Looks like a tunnel to the underworld," he murmured, his tone caught between awe and reverence. Katerina drew her antique pistol, the weapon's finish dulled from years of careful use. She found herself wishing she'd brought her digital weapon instead, but it still lay on Osric's workbench, far away in the fortress monastery. "Then let's hope," she said, "that we're not about to meet its king." The tunnel widened abruptly, the air ahead trembling with heat. The lumen lights were swallowed by blackness, a void vast enough that sound itself seemed to fall away. Beneath the gloom, an underlight glowed like distant fire. They reached what must once have been a terminus, 3 great train platforms, their rails ending abruptly in a yawning abyss. No carriages waited in the stations now, only the echo of long-forgotten arrivals. Beyond the threshold, a blast door stood half open, its hinges fused solid by millennia of corrosion. They passed through it into a cavern so immense that the eye could not take it in all at once. A ledge ran along the precipice, wide enough for tanks to maneuver, stretching into the distance until it was lost in shadow. Above, the vaulted ceiling was faintly visible, painted red by the light below. But below, that was where the world fell away. The floor plunged downwards, deeper and deeper into blackness, until molten crimson glowed far below like veins of living fire. Across the chasm loomed a colossal figure, carved from the mountain's heart itself, a skull-faced god, gazing across eternity. Its stone features were blank, inscrutable, and crusted with the white residue of ages. The deacon's voice echoed in the stillness, reverent yet amused. "Look at that! We found the king of the underworld, and it was Wulfgar the whole time." The chaplain regarded the monument, his skull helm reflecting the same pale sheen. "Yes," he said, "my namesake, I presume." Absalon nodded thoughtfully. "So the legends of Wulfgar's journey into the underworld, the tales that he forged his strength in the depths, they make sense now. He built this machine." Below them, immense reactors thrummed, red-hot giants of metal and stone. Each exhaled waves of shimmering heat that misted the Astartes' lenses and made the air ripple. "Told you," rumbled Godric. "Geothermal. Those are Terra reactors, tapping the planet's mantle to feed the surface grids. You see them on most forge worlds or hive cities, but—" He paused, his vox crackling faintly. "I never knew this world had one." Osric glanced at his auspex, its rune display flickering erratically from interference. "I can't be certain," he said slowly, "but I think this power station could produce 795 billion kilowatt-hours per week." He pointed with his gauntlet toward the far wall, where enormous beetle-like machines glowed with internal plasma light. "Those are heat exchange vents. They're still running, and at full capacity. This whole place is balanced on the edge of overload." For a long moment, no one spoke. The ancient machine world beneath Neatwertha breathed, alive and eternal, its pulse older than any city above. "Could it explode? How much time do we have?" asked Wulfgar, his voice heavy with concern as he looked out over the endless machinery below. Osric shook his head solemnly. "Yes, eventually, but not soon. 2, perhaps 3,000 years left." Wulfgar slapped his pauldron with an audible clang. "Idiot," he muttered. Godric leaned forward, his massive dreadnought frame hissing as pistons flexed. The red light from the reactors gleamed across his armored bulk. "Most of the energy must be diverted to the pumps," he said, his vox gravel deep and echoing. "Somewhere beneath all this will be pressure inducers, maybe shielding systems too. But the surplus energy, that could power not only this island but Fiskbala as well." He raised one enormous claw and pointed toward the abyss. Stormwield already provides a void shield over the northern hemisphere. If we run conduits from here, feed it through phase transistors, we could extend a shield across the entire island. Osric was still watching through his servo skulls, which glided in silent arcs around the vast structure. Their lumen beams played across ruptured walls and heat exchangers glowing like suns. "I'm detecting imperfections in the framework," he said. "Stress damage, tectonic movement probably. Energy fluctuations too. That's likely the cause of the periodic flooding." He turned to face the others, the green of his auspex glinting against his helm. "When we return to the surface, we should bring down at least 2 arc reactors and a pair of gravity tethers from the Eclipse of Destiny. They could stabilize the structure until Fexion arrives to secure it. He's worked with mantle exchangers before." As the officers spoke, Deacon Absalon had wandered to the edge of the ledge, into a stretch of shadow where small, square structures clustered like tombs. The plateau was covered with them, workers' huts, storage sheds, and what looked like converted dwellings. "Someone lived down here," he murmured, stepping inside one of the crumbling shelters. Dust shifted under his boots, and the stale air smelt faintly of rust and oil. On a cracked metal table lay a few objects, tarnished but newer than the ruins around them. He turned one over in his hands, frowning. Inquisitor Katerina Malinovska followed him, her lumen casting long shadows across the wall. She noticed faint carvings scratched into the surface. "What does that say?" she asked quietly. Absalon leaned closer, tracing the runes with a gloved hand. "My old Werthen is spotty," he admitted, "but I believe it says Seer Athelwulf was here." Roughly. Techno-archaeologist Vane Kelev hurried up beside them, his servitor's light sweeping over the inscriptions. He adjusted his lenses, then spoke loud enough for the others to hear. "It says, 'We are the expedition of Ethelwulf the Seer. We found the tomb of Wulfgar and left offerings.'" Absalon examined the table again, sorting through what remained, fragments of metal, carved stones, and a few preserved objects untouched by time. "I suppose these are the offerings," he said softly. "Artifacts, like those we found in the packs of the fallen warriors." He glanced back toward the glowing abyss. They must have thought this place, this reactor complex, was the tomb of their god. Osric leaned into the doorway, lumen light glinting off his helm. "They must have used this place as a base of operations for their expedition," he said, scanning the chamber. "I think I found a midden over there." He gestured to a small hut with no door, and the nearby Frateris militia instinctively edged away from it. "What else does it say?" asked Katerina. Techno-archaeologist Vane Kelev adjusted the brass lenses on his ocular rig and bent closer to the etched script. "It continues," he murmured. "We found the sunken city spoken of in tales. We found the lost ancestors and the metal sarcophagus of the Wigathane of the Lady. We found much of goods, but cloth decayed. We did not disturb the dead. Let spirits lie." Wulfgar shifted uncomfortably beside the doorway, his armored frame almost too large for the cramped space. "I don't understand any of that. They found dead?" "Yes," said the deacon, stepping beside him. His tone was somber. "It stands to reason. If the city below was flooded, there would be bodies. Entire generations, perhaps, lost beneath the sea." Osric nodded. "Then this confirms it. There is a city beneath us, the same one those other tunnels led toward." "Is there anything more?" asked Wulfgar. Vane Kelev nodded slowly, running his finger across a section of the wall where the carvings grew jagged and erratic. "Yes, this next part is different. The hand changed and the runes are rougher." His voice dropped as he read aloud. "We escaped the city of the dead. We lost Tanner, Oswulf, and Chessman. We head for the surface tomorrow, back up through the Welgerhus under the Holmbjorg. High Father, light our way. The Iron King's wrath be placated." A heavy silence fell. The sound of distant machinery thrummed beneath their boots. Osric rubbed his chin. "They didn't make it. The sea lice followed them. So this Iron King sent them." The deacon raised a hand in benediction toward the scratched wall. "Then at least we know the steps in the bunker lead to the Holmbjorg. But this city of the dead, it sounds as if there are 2 cities beneath us." Wulfgar nodded grimly. "That's what it sounds like. Come, we've seen what we need to see here. We'll follow in their footsteps." The deacon pulled his damp robes tighter about himself and gave a weary sigh. "Then let us hope," he said quietly, "that this Iron King is as welcoming to us as he was to these poor souls." The light from their lumens lingered for a moment upon the wall, on the final, trembling words of Seer Athelwulf's doomed expedition, before they turned away. One by one, the beams swept from the room, shadows reclaiming the runes until they vanished into the dark, as though history itself were closing its eyes. Wulfgar was the last to look back. The old script glimmered faintly in the reflection of his helm lenses before the light died completely. "Their path is ours now," he said, his voice low, almost reverent. The deacon's staff tapped once against the floor, its sound swallowed by the vast, breathing silence. "And may the Emperor walk it beside us," he murmured, stepping after the others. The expedition moved on, past the huts and the relics of the long dead, their lumens shrinking to thin golden halos in the black. The air grew colder again, heavy with the scent of rust and stone. Behind them, the chamber fell still. Only the faint whisper of the machinery below remained, echoing like a heartbeat through the miles of buried world. Ahead lay only darkness and the road to the city of the dead.